There wasn't a textbook like that around. To have Indigenous knowledges portrayed, to have Indigenous leadership and governance over the whole book was very important for us.
People were kind of saying, what's social emotional wellbeing? We don't get it. What's the difference between mental health and what's mental illness? And there was a lot of this arguing or debate around what the definitions were and who agreed on what. I think it was a really important time to actually put something down on paper that was an actual text that people could refer to.
That understanding of that holistic notion of health and connectedness to culture, country, kin, spirituality was not in the discourse in 2014 still.
Around that time, there really was very little in the way of models or frameworks that articulated our understandings of well-being and mental health and social-emotional well-being.
When we got to the second book, it was already evident that the feedback from the first book was very complimentary. It was evident that it was required.
It was a great experience. I mean, and it was very hard. What I recall about it was just the effort that it took to put material together in a new way.
Being an honorary fellow at University of Melbourne and doing guest lectures, that book has become one of the Bibles, so to speak, of Aboriginal social emotional wellbeing and mental health.
Because it's so accessible, has been downloaded, for example, by thousands of users.
It was the most practical thing I did have, but also it was such a comprehensive resource that I referenced it for all my university. It was such a practical tool that I used throughout my traineeship.
It's a fantastic resource to me as a CEO, but not just as a CEO. As an Aboriginal person working in Aboriginal health, trying to make better life and health outcomes for our mob.
It's a powerful resource with huge contribution from professionals in the field, but also community people that are really able to shape an understanding of how we do things.
They were doing an international mental health handbook, which then goes globally, and they contacted us and asked if they could have excerpts out of various different chapters to bring into this handbook, which was then in turn translated into 11 languages.
It's had an amazing impact because I teach Aboriginal health, and I also often will go out and do community lectures or community presentations, and I've referred to the book. And the amount of requests that I've had over the years for students, for health professionals, for community workers contacting me to ask where can they get a copy of the book.
I think it's actually changed the discourse not just for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but also for everyone else.
The impact of the Working Together book has been quite profound. The feedback we've had, I know that for some mental health or psychology programs or even health programs, it's a core text, so it's widely used, very widely used.
Its impact has been quite significant in that people that probably wouldn't have read about this or about Aboriginal people and the topics that were presented in the books wouldn't have done so, but were able to. Just from an exposure point of view, it was huge.
People still reference this as the gold standard for practical guides for supporting First Nations mental health in Australia.
Has it shifted policy? I'm undoubtedly certain of that.
I'm sure that other editors will say that when we go out and about, a lot of people come up and say to us, that was our Bible.
It was very much, at its time, groundbreaking. We didn't realise how much so at the time.
It challenges the discipline of psychology. It challenges its logics and really starts to put forward Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives talking back to those disciplines.
It's considered a seminal text, that it has been a groundbreaker. It's led the way for many other people to pick up elements in the disciplines and work with that and explore areas.
I find the book to be a really important contribution to this conversation about how we understand social and emotional wellbeing, how we understand mental health, specifically in the context of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities.
It's still being used, it's still relevant, and I think 10 years down the track, that's a good thing.
is still the most significant text in Indigenous mental health and wellbeing. We know that the first edition went out quickly, the second edition as well. Even though it's 10 years old, it's still current.
When I reflect back on the Working Together book and I think about the complexity of some of the chapters, the theories, the thinking, just this sheer intellect that went into that book, I think it's still quite groundbreaking today, and it probably is still pushing a lot of boundaries today, even though we wrote it really quite some time ago. I just think we were ahead of the game back then.
Be courageous and trust your instincts and your intuition to use these kind of frameworks in a way that's going to work for you and your local communities, and to draw on your identity and your belonging, your cultural knowledge, and take confidence in that.
I would encourage all of our Indigenous authors and our allies out there to get together and collaborate on some of these manuscripts and collaborate on more textbooks, because there's more needed.
Value your Indigenous knowledge and write it up, get it published. And non-Indigenous researchers, look at how to do culturally appropriate research with Indigenous people.